It's live. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, either live right now or later on. I hope you can hear me well, and I think everything is working. Technology, you never know. You click here and click there, and you never know. But I think everything is working right now. And let's go. So, we are going to be talking tonight about a very important subject. I find it very important, and I think many people find it important. And I think it affects lots of people, if not everyone in this planet, in a way or another. And that is emotional abuse. It is a heavy subject in a certain way because it's something that uh, creates a lot of suffering, and it's a long journey to heal. And I have to say that from my own experience. Let's just me check if everything is. I think everything is running good. If you're there, just say hello because something it says here there is an error, but I think it's okay. I think it's I think we're live. If not, I'll just record this and upload it. Anyway, I talk about this subject from my own experience, and I will share a little bit of my journey on this healing process of emotional abuse and what I've learned and what I've done. And starting from the beginning, I have been through not only one, but a few abusive relationships. And not abusive relationships don't only happen with a love partner, right? A romantic partnership. It happens in different ways. It happens with friendships. It happens with work relationships. It happens with governmental systems. Yeah, it's in all of these levels, right? So, starting with the level of romantic relationship that is connected to emotional abuse, I was on that for I would say like almost 15 years. And on the first years of that relationship, I didn't really know that I was into an abusive relationship. And that is because we grow up believing on certain things and thinking that certain things are normal. And that's what happens with most people that have this addiction to attracting emotional abuse, because it is an addiction, and I will go into that later. But uh, what happens is that we grow since we grow up, we're like this empty hard drive. Although we come from other experiences and other incarnations, and our consciousness and our soul is much bigger than that, and we come full of other experiences. Our body, our brain, our system, it's like an empty hard drive when we're born again on this body as a baby. And so we start adding to our previous reincarnation experiences. We start adding the programming that we receive here. So we receive programming from different sources. We receive a programming at a DNA level from our ancestors, from both father and mother ancestors. So you can imagine how much programming comes through the DNA of the body you're incarnating. And then we receive the programming from the adults that raise us, from school, from the system, from TV, from the books we read, from the friends we have relationship with, but especially our parents. And I am not here to say that anybody is at fault. It is not anybody's fault, and it's not about pointing fingers to anybody, because ultimately we are the ones who have to learn with the experience, and we are the ones who have to raise above that, dissolve the patterns, and evolve with the experience. So I'm not here to point fingers, but we have to acknowledge certain things and where the patterns come from, right? So if you were raised by your parents, what is it that the system tells you? The system teaches everybody that our parents are the two people that are supposed to love you the most unconditionally. So we have this idea about unconditional love from our parents, but they are humans. They have a journey to go through, they have their learnings, so they are not perfect into the perfection of the universe. We are perfect, but we are imperfect at the same time, is one of the paradoxes of the universe. So into their imperfection, they are also learning, right? And not always they are prepared to have children and love them unconditionally. So we start making the correlation of their behavior to us as love. So we label that behavior as love. Let's say an example. Um, your parent, it's mad at you because you did something they didn't like, and then they beat you. That's something that is not happening lately in several countries because it is prohibited to beat a child, but it happened a lot, and it still happens in many countries. Yeah, that correction is done with a physical reaction of beating the child, right? Even if it's just like or like this, it is a physical reaction, right? But in our labeling of unconditional love, we get this, and okay, if somebody beats me, this is love. Do you realize how deep that is? And I started to learn that or acknowledge that when a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, she lives in Finland right now, and if she's listening, hi, I love you, my friend. Thank you so much for giving me that book. Anyway, she handed me a book called Women Who Love Too Much. And that was the first time that I realized this mechanic. It is written by a psychologist, and she explains the different cases of uh, patterns that people get into their labeling of love, right? And once you have this label of what love is, when you grow up and you start attracting a romantic relationship, you feel unconsciously attracted by people who will behave similar to the adults that raised us, that were supposed to love us unconditionally. And I'm not saying they didn't love us, but they had their issues to work, right? So they were not perfect. And if they beat you, if they yell at you, if they um, kept putting you down with their intention of correcting you, right? Oh, like saying things like, oh, you never do this right. Just by saying that phrase, you can't imagine how much damage it can cause to a child for their adulthood to attract people that will be doing the same thing, putting you down all the time. Okay, so enough of the parents. So now you understand that we actually grab these patterns from when we are being raised, when we are babies. Like it starts from the from being inside the mom's belly. You know, you're already uh, getting the emotions of what's going on. So if there were parents fights, that's another thing. Yeah. So if your parents or the adults raising you were fighting a lot against each other, that's another pattern you grab. Oh, okay, this is what a relationship is supposed to be. So either people grow up to be addicted to being abused, or they grow up to being abusers themselves. And some people, I've seen cases, are both. They are being abused by someone until one day you wake up to this. Like maybe if you're listening to this video and what I'm saying is the first time you heard that, but maybe not. But if it is the first time, then it's like, wow, I never thought about that before. Like I felt when I started reading this book and all these examples of situations with people that were attracting abusive relationships over and over and over in their lives. So I was reading this book, which is full of stories and examples. And I was like, holy, so this is how it works. And it's a shock because you start understanding that you are the one who has to say no. The magic word is no. And usually, when you are addicted to being abused, when you attract people that abuse you, you have difficulties saying no because you have also a need to be accepted, to be included. And I can openly say that I have that issue. I still have after, I would say, decades of of a healing process. I still can identify pieces of that. So it is a long process. If it is the first time that you're hearing about that, don't rush on your process. Just realize that it is a long process. It is something that you're going to have to be watching, meditating about, paying attention on yourself all the time, learning to say no. It is amazing how many times I felt proud of myself when I stepped out, I stepped up for myself and said, no, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I don't accept this. We are the ones who actually draw the boundary. You know, when someone comes from an abusive perspective, even if they don't know it, because all each one of us, it's dealing with we're dealing with our own issues, and sometimes people don't even realize they are being abusive to you because they also have their own issues from when they were growing up and their own patterns, and we have ours, but each one of us has the power of growing up emotionally and stepping up, stepping uh, forward, and moving on from this abusive need. It's funny to say need, but it is. And actually realizing that we are the ones that can create a happier life for ourselves, create new patterns, step out of these old patterns, let go of this, and move on into a different reality. We are the ones who can do that for ourselves. But don't worry, you're not alone, because there are lots of people who have been through that or still go through that, that help on the way. So when we ask for help, people come and help, and we should open up and accept help, because it is not easy to go through this process alone, although it is an individual internal process and decision. So going back to my own experience, so I read this book my friend gave me, and I was in Brazil. It was translated from English to Portuguese, but still had that same message. And I started realizing that I had part on what I was going through, because until that moment, I thought that it was all the other person's fault for doing that to me. And in a certain way, I felt that I was responsible for changing that person, for doing good to that person, and that one day this person would wake up because I was there to help. There are lots of emotional mechanisms there that we grab for ourselves just as an excuse to do not step out of the situation. And it is very good to understand that we know that if we step out of the situation, in especially if it is a romantic relationship of abuse, that the other person is going to get worse. So we feel afraid as well and feel not empowered, especially because after so long of being in an abusive situation, our self-esteem, it's broken. And that is a process that abusers do to their victims. There are different kinds of abusers. There are psychopaths, there are narcissists, there are people that abuse with the best of intentions. They think they're doing good by trying to make you do the things that they think is right for you and not respecting your individuality. So there are different kinds of abuse. And uh, understanding what kind of abuse you're attracted to is very important. So let me touch into the fact that this is considered an addiction. It is considered by psychology an addiction to the level of a drug addiction, like alcohol or any kind of addictive drug. And it is an emotional addiction, but as well as chemical, because of all the adrenaline that is generated on your body when you feel certain things on situations of abuse, right? The fear, the you're addicted to the fear, you're addicted to feeling the victim, and and so on. So you start always to feel attracted by people who show that kind of behavior to you, because you're addicted to that drug, the drug of that uh, negative, unbalanced behavior towards you. And that happens because your self esteem is broken. The self esteem can have been broken from when you were a child. And sometimes it happens later in life, but usually it's from when you were growing up. And what can I say for what I did to step out of that and create a happier life? First, it was acknowledgement. So the first step for any kind of addiction. So if you think about a person that drinks a lot of alcohol or smokes cigarettes or takes any other kind of drug, first they have to admit that they are addicted to that substance or to that behavior. So admitting the situation you are in, it's the first step, the acknowledgement of the situation. Because people who are in denial, they will never get out of the situation. Denial, it's, I consider it like when you are cleaning a house and you shove the dirt underneath the carpet. You're not really cleaning, you're because you're not acknowledging that there's dirt, you're just hiding it. So acknowledgement is the first step. And if this is the first time you're hearing about that in this perspective I'm sharing with you, meditate about it and start acknowledging the situation you are in. If you're feeling unhappy because you're attracting uh, unhappy relationships of any kind, you are addicted and you're attracting, and you should first acknowledge that. So, this is a step of taking responsibility for our own creation of our happiness or creation of our reality. We are responsible for creating our own reality. When you think about how the world is right now in a bigger picture, you have all kinds of situations happening at the same time. You have people in the other side of the world who are hungry. You have people next door, your neighbor that maybe is going through something you don't even know. Every one of us is creating our own reality in our bubble as far as we can see, right? And happiness can be created in the midst of of any chaos happening around the world. Right now, there are so many people suffering because of things that I don't want to discuss right now, but you know what's happening around. And some other peoples are thriving. So, what is it that makes the difference between a human being soul that is thriving on this moment and another one that is suffering for any reason, for lack of resources, for sicknesses, for relationships? So, this is just a like going through a bigger picture of things where you can see, you can understand that it doesn't matter what's happening in the world right now. On your own reality, you can create a different reality for yourself. And it's our own responsibility to do that. Let's say, for example, right now, well, I wasn't going to touch this subject, but I think I can just give a little hint. Like, I've been observing the world and the happenings for a while, and I knew we were going to get to the situation, and I know what's some of what's coming, and it's time to prepare for something. So it's not a good idea to live in a huge, big, mega city because chaos will be bigger. So if you want to create your own reality, you will start planning and making it happen so that you move to a smaller place, closer to nature, where you have more resources when things get a little bit weird. That's just an example of taking action to create your own reality. So, going back to emotional abuse and specifically on romantic relationships that are abusive, The first step, like I said, is to acknowledge that you have this addiction and that your self-esteem is low, and that you need to do a lot of work to create your own happiness. So you have to learn to say no and to draw your boundaries. You have to start acknowledging that it's not all right for someone to beat you physically or emotionally. Beating, emotional beating is worse than physical. And you know why? Because when you are emotionally beaten, you don't have marks on your body. You have marks on your heart, on your soul, on your feelings, which are not visible, and they are easier to hide and not to acknowledge. So when somebody is beating somebody physically, it's much easier to acknowledge the abuse than if you're not getting beaten. So many people are being abused and they don't realize it's abuse because there's nothing physical going on. It's just words that beat you every day, that make you unhappy, and you don't even know. Words that put you down. An example that I went through, like the person used to always say that I didn't do things right, like driving, or and then you start believing, oh, I don't know how to drive, or I'm not a good driver, because you hear that every day, and or oh, you're this and you're that and you're fat and you're worth nothing and you never do all of that. It's emotional abuse. It's beaten with words, beaten your mind, beaten your heart, and then you cry and you're unhappy and you don't know why. And the other person just thrives because they are addicted to abusing. They thrive on abusing. So it is a vicious circle, a vicious circle, addictive circle of of I would say exchange, right? So the abuser and the victim are both addicted to that vicious circle of energy. Talking about energy, usually the person who abuses doesn't have inner contact with their higher self, with their light. They don't know how to draw energy from their own light, from you can call it God, the universe, however you want to call it, but they don't have this contact. So they need to to suck energy like a vampire from the person being abused. And that's why they don't want to let go of the victim, because they feed out of the energy of the victim. They are energetic vampires and they don't even know. The day they awaken to their own soul reality and understand that they don't need to feed out of others' energy, it will be freedom for them too. But it's not our responsibility to free those people from their own addiction. That's the thing. So another step of healing from this process is understanding that is not our responsibility, just like it's not our responsibility to heal the entire world. We can contribute with our high vibrations to the whole collective of energy raising up, but it's not our individual responsibility to heal the entire world. Our own responsibility is to heal ourselves, because by healing ourselves, we pull others to heal themselves by osmos. I don't know if you know the word osmos, but it's like it's a biological process of grabbing the pattern from the other and following. I don't know if I explained it well, but you can look on the dictionary the word and understand better the biological process of osmose. So by raising your vibrations, by stepping into happiness inside of yourself, you can actually help a lot of people to drive with you. And you don't need to have that intention. Your only intention is to yourself, to heal yourself, to raise your own vibrations, to tap into the inner, indestructible, magnificent light of your higher self, of your being, and allowing yourself to be happy, understanding what unconditional love comes from within yourself. Once you step into that, once you start loving yourself, then you can allow others to love yourself because you love yourself, and others that will admire your self, admire you, will be attracted by that. And that's how the attraction happens. When you're playing the victim role of being abused, when you bought into that pattern from childhood or whenever that happened, when you got into that pattern, you start vibrating into that pattern of attraction of the vampires. They sense, hey, here is somebody who likes to be abused. Yeah, this person likes to be good. I'm gonna do a lot of damage here. But who attracted this person? Your vibration. You did, because you're vibrating on that pattern, on that frequency of victim. And I'm talking all of this to you here, but I'm still working on this process because I did heal the attraction for a romantic relationship that was abusive. But I started attracting people that were supposed to be my friends doing the same thing in a different level because they're not living together, but they were doing things like that and things that hurt you. And he was like, why are they doing this to me? And it's like, oh, okay, I still have that pattern. Have to change more. I have to love myself more. I have to change my reality. I have to change friends, attract other kind of people. And then I started attracting working people like that, bosses like that, people that would, oh, she likes to be good and do everything that I say. Doesn't know how to say no. Let's call her at midnight and ask her to get up from bed and do this work. This happens when you have such low self-esteem that you send that signal to the person that they can do whatever they want with you, because you're never going to say no. The people who are abusing you, when you start saying no, it's like, what? What's happening? She said no. Oh, she's changing. She's not going to accept everything. And then when you do that for the first time, when you say no to something that is going to be harmful to you feel bad because you feel guilty that you're not pleasing the person, you're not being that good person you're supposed to be because of the pattern that you acquired by whatever reason from your parents, from your adults that raised you, from your religion, from your government, from your school. There are so many places you can have acquired that pattern from, which is not so important to identify, although it helps. But along the journey, you start to identify pieces of that the puzzle every day. And this brings me to the next step the next thing you can do to heal yourself. And that is called meditation. Lots of people talk about meditation, and there are all kinds of different methods to meditate. But what is meditation ultimately? It is first, when you're starting to learn to meditate, you learn a technique. So you can adopt the technique you feel like. But it's about breathing, acknowledging your breathing, your oxygen that comes in and out and activates your brain and your cells and makes you vibrate good. And by breathing, doing breathing exercises, you start paying attention on what's going on inside of you, not only your physical body, but you start paying attention on what's going on with your emotions. So you usually, like, I'm in favor of meditations that you don't have to put an intention on the meditation, but you quiet your mind to a point through breathing that you get to a very relaxed point that you start paying attention on what's going on. So certain emotions will start to flow, certain thoughts are going to start to come, certain memories are going to start to show up, and you are just there observing yourself. Observe, oh, look at this. I didn't remember that I was feeling like that. I didn't know this thought was there. Oh, look at this emotion. Oh, so you're starting to know yourself. So knowing yourself, meditation is about knowing yourself. Is you knowing yourself, you going inside of you to know yourself. And there is a point on your meditation journey that you don't need the techniques anymore. You are in constant state of meditation. You're in constant state of presence, of being here and now. Sometimes you're thinking about the past, of things that passed, or you're planning the future. And remember, time is not linear. But sometimes you step out of that center of the presence of the here and now. But most of the time, you are very present here and now. And that is what helps us to understand ourselves better and to shift the patterns we acknowledge. So, meditation is key. And it doesn't matter the method you choose to start meditating if you have never meditated, but understand that the goal of meditation is ultimately to be very present on yourself, to be able to pay attention to what you're thinking and what you're feeling all the time, so that you can make decisions at this moment to put something in action to change the course of your reality. And don't think that I have resolved everything 100% at this point. I'm walking on this journey for a long time and I'm still walking. I'm still paying attention. Dreams, it's something you can get a lot of information from yourself through dreams. If you program yourself before you go to sleep to bring information from your dreams that will help you get a solution for your situation. So then, if you're going that route, keep a journey. Keep a journal, like a little book you write. And nowadays, I find technology helps more because after practicing writing in the middle of the night, you wake up from one dream and then you don't want to forget and you have to write that you're half asleep and writing. So I realized that actually grabbing your cell phone and recording it, recording your voice, is more uh, uh, it helps better to practice that, because it's there. You just okay, okay, and the next day you listen to, and then you remember what the message of the dream was. If you don't used to dream, well, we all dream, but the question, the thing is to remember the dream. It's like another day I was reading in a forum, somebody asking if they should smoke pot and meditate, if that's good or not. I was finding very amusing to read all the answers to this question, because I think that you shouldn't mix any substances to alter your body chemically. You can do all of that through meditation. With meditation, you don't need to use any substances. And I was saying that I forgot why I was saying that, but okay, let's go back to where it was. Meditation. So meditation, it's key for paying attention and dreaming. Oh, okay, I was talking about dreaming. So if you think you don't dream, it's just that you're not remembering. Now I remember why I was saying that, because there was another question about astral travel, and the question was how to astral travel. I want to learn how to astral travel. Well, you always astral travel. Every time you go to sleep, you're astral traveling. You can sometimes go far, you can even go to another dimensions, or you can stay around, but you're out of the body and you're astral traveling, and you always come back. The only time we don't come back to the body is when it's time to leave the body. The body is like a car that when it's done, is done. There's no fixing. You got to buy another car. The same thing with the physical body. I don't want to diverge into that because it's deep. But anyway, you always astral travel. You always dream. The thing is to remember. So that is one technique you can use to know more about yourself, to heal the processes of being addicted to abuse, to emotional abuse, especially. Like I was mentioning, emotional abuse, it's much harder to detect and to heal than physical abuse, because physical abuse is right there. You have bruises, you feel pain, and you have to acknowledge it. But if it's emotional, many times we get into denial. So going back to what we were saying, first step, you have to acknowledge that you are creating a suffering situation for you, allowing others to make you unhappy. And the second step was to learn to say no, draw your boundaries. Okay, you can do this and this, but no, you don't cross this line, because this is the limit, right? Yeah, and it's very personal, because sometimes it's, I don't know, you just don't want to go to a place where you don't like being, like a nightclub. That's just an example, right? You don't like to go to a nightclub, and you will say yes to please your friends, to look good, and you will be unhappy the whole night at the nightclub because you didn't want to go, and you didn't want to be there. You see how complex is this little thing, this little example I gave you. It's an example of not knowing how to draw the boundaries on what you want and what you don't want, on what makes you happy and what makes you unhappy, and how people can persuade you to I don't know if I pronounce this word, persuade you to actually convince you to make something you don't want to do. Just like a vendor, right? A salesperson, they are very good on that. They can make you buy things you never imagined you were going to buy. And I got to confess that I still fall for that sometimes. So it is a process, it's a journey. I've been on this journey for many, many years. And another thing I would say that helped me, and I think it helps a lot of people, it's to see a counselor, to see a psychologist, to see somebody who is neutral to your situation, but that understands the process and that can help you with the journey. Because it is a long journey of constant paying attention to how you're directing your life. And somebody neutral to that situation with training and with knowledge of that can help you. I can help you too if you want, because I do a different kind of counseling, which is a spiritual level of counseling, and with psychic readings and the Mayan calendar. I dive you into self knowledge, help you, right? Because who does the work is you. We do our own work, but we can have somebody helping us. And it can be a psychologist, it can be a counselor, it can be a yoga teacher, it can be, it's somebody with knowledge, experience, and neutral that can push you a little bit if you allow that, right? Because ultimately, we have to allow people to help us. If we don't want to be helped, there's no help happening at all. And that is a danger that many of us in that situation fall for, because sometimes some people try helping us on the way, trying to make us acknowledge that we are accepting a situation that is not acceptable, and then we don't want to acknowledge, and then we don't want to see that person anymore, because that when we see that person, it represents facing the reality, because that person knows what we're going through, and then we start avoiding the contact with that person that is trying to help, just because we don't want to be helped, right? And it's our own decision. And if you decide to acknowledge your situation, to learn to say no to situations of abuse, and to look for somebody to help, and meditate, and embrace a journey of self knowledge, embrace a journey of self discovery and change, and evolve, not only physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Everything is connected. We are spiritual beings incarnated into a physical body, and we have an emotional body, and we have a mental body. And that is important to know too, because I realized when I grew up, I thought intelligence was one thing. It was the intellectual intelligence, and I even did an IQ test when I was a child. Oh, yeah, she's super intelligent. uh, yeah, but there is something that is acknowledged now by psychology and by science, something called emotional intelligence, EI. And that's something that the system doesn't teach us. We have to dig in and learn ourselves to acquire emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence encompasses the knowledge of ourselves and the knowing how to say no to abusive situations. Emotional intelligence is the choice we make every day to create situations and relationships that will enrich our lives and not to put us down. So sometimes I actually went through that not very long ago, a few days ago. I was just observing someone who gave me a feedback that it was supposed to be an uplifting feedback, but the feedback put me down. And I was like, oh, is this person actually saying the truth? I was like that. And I'm like, no, this person is just trying to put me down. And then I raised my vibe. I was like, I don't accept that reality is not mine. Uh, you understand how deep that is? But you get to acknowledge and see those things very fast as you go along on your journey of discovery of yourself and being present on yourself all the time. Because then you right away is like, oh, here, until I don't accept that as my reality, you can take it with you. Yeah, this is actually fun. So to close this beautiful night of um, freedom talk, I would like to wish you all the best on your own journey of self discovery. Put myself available to you if you want to have a consultation to dive into spiritual knowledge of yourself through cards, oracles, and the Mayan calendar. And also invite you to subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to grow my channel and I can only do that with your help. So click like, click subscribe and share this video if you feel that it's going to help someone. And let's see what else. We're going through very interesting times of deep, deep, deep change. Remember that to embrace the new, sometimes the old needs to be destroyed. And that's what's happening with the planetary system, not planetary, our planet system right now. Actually, it's happening to the whole planetary system, but on our planet here, we're going through a deep transformation. The old doesn't serve us anymore and is being destroyed right on front of our eyes. And if we haven't been prepared for this moment, we're having lots of shocks. So hold on, because when you clean your closet first, it looks like a big mess. You have to take everything out and then you're going to put everything in order again. So this is the process we're going through in a bigger scale. And talking about that, I just wanted to make a comparison of the abusive relationships we have with romantic relationships, friends, and bosses to a bigger level of abuse, which I have recently identified, which is the same pattern. The system abuse, the actual governments and system and corporations abuse to humanity is the same thing. Humanity needs to learn to have self esteem, to thrive, to understand we deserve to be happy and to create a happier reality for the humankind on this planet. This planet is abundant. There is no scarcity of anything for everybody who is here. We just bought the idea from the system that there's not enough for everybody, that we are too many here, that the humans are bad, and blah, blah, blah. A bunch of stuff that we bought into to accept the abuse. And I don't want to dive too much into that, but it is a major scale of the same abuse we accept into our lives towards other people's relationships with us. Think about that. So there is the same kind of abuse happening in bigger scales that humanity has the opportunity right now to step out of and acknowledge that first. I see lots of people in denial of things right now. No, everything is good. First, you have to acknowledge that is not. It's not okay to have children being abused. It's not okay to have women being abused. It's not okay to have wars. It's not okay to be killing people for money. It's not. So we have to acknowledge that in order to change. And change is hard. Yes, it is. It's a journey. And as human species on this planet, we have the opportunity right now to step up and raise our vibrations. So the biggest work we can do right now is raise our vibrations and thrive and be happy. And I will see you again next Sunday. I will have a very special guest, and we haven't chosen the title of the talk, but it's going to be about emotional healing process as well. He's going to share his journey with us, and I am pretty sure you're going to enjoy next Sunday as well. And I'll see you again pretty soon. Big kiss on your heart, trans vibrating into a new you. Bye. Bye. Get until I click end stream. There we go.